Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And Epic History TV is continuing with Napoleon's first campaign, Part 5, Rivoli. Now, this is a bit of an interesting one because I am a patron for Epic History TV. I supported their Patreon because I think it's one of the best channels on YouTube. So I am recording this actually before it is being publicly released on YouTube. Now, to be very, very clear, I am not releasing this reaction video until Epic History TV comes out with theirs. That would be completely unfair to film a reaction video and basically spoil it for all you guys. So if you still want to, the video is always, the original video that is always in the description below. So go check that one out and go give Epic History TV not only a subscribe, but check out their Patreon as well. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. It's been a while since we saw the last one, but there's always a little introduction in the beginning. Let's get to it.
In 1796, at the height of the French Revolutionary Wars, a young French general took charge of a ragged, demoralized army in northern Italy. It was his first command. Many expected him to fail.
Look at that flow.
Instead, in just 1 month, he won his first brilliant campaign. With astonishing self-confidence, boldness and energy, he led his army to victory after victory, transforming the war in Europe, winning praise from a grateful republic, and forging a legend. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte's first campaign, and the dawn of a new age.
Now, since the Napoleon trailer has come out, since I think it was before Part 4 came out, pretty sure. I'm very curious how much of the Napoleon in Italy we'll actually get to see in the Ridley Scott film that's upcoming in November. I'm really curious about that one. Or maybe it will just start
January 1797. A new year, but familiar problems for 27-year-old General Bonaparte,
I remember now,
waging war against the Austrians in northern Italy. He has the great fortress city of Mantua under siege. And after a narrow victory at Arcole, he's once again driven back the Austrian armies trying to march to its aid. But the French army of Italy is in a ragged state. Troops have not been paid for weeks. Their uniforms are disintegrating. Their shoes are broken. And above all, they're hungry.
How would they get paid? I never even thought about this. I mean, obviously nowadays when you go on tour, everything's just done automatically to your electronic bank account, obviously. But would there just be like a cash desk? Would they just give them cash in the middle of Italy? Like, I'm imagining them setting up tables like in the middle of nowhere, Italy, and then just handing out francs to the soldiers there. But then what are they going to do? Just keep all this cash on them? Like, how? I never even thought of this. How did soldiers get paid during this time? I mean, obviously in garrison, I'm sure that there was something like this in where they were. But when they're out in the field, when they're on tour, so to say, how did they get paid? That would be a good History Matters video, actually.
One of Napoleon's major concerns is the wretched state of medical care for his men.
Yeah, and remember that in when Napoleon invaded Russia, more than half of his troops died to non-man-made causes, right? So disease, the weather, the environment, everything like that. More than half were not caused by human combat, should I say. I should have said that rather than man-made causes. Human combat.
The hospitals lack everything. Our wounded are lying on the floors and in the most horrible state of destitution. It's not just a question of saving lives and getting wounded men back to their units. Medical care affects morale. As troops going into combat want to know that if the worst happens, they'll be looked after.
Yep.
Conditions are much worse for the Austrian garrison of Mantua, commanded by Field Marshal Wurmser. In 4 months of siege, 9,000 soldiers have died from disease, wounds, or the effects of malnutrition. Survivors live off horse meat, civilians off rats and dogs.
Christ.
Even these miserable rations will run out by the 27th of January, just a few weeks away. The clock is ticking. The Austrians must relieve Mantua by that date, or lose the city, and with it, the war in Italy.
I wonder if there were any soldiers that were defecting, right? Like just defecting to the French. I'm sure you could probably pop away in the night and maybe surrender to the French. You would probably be in worse conditions, though, I would imagine, as a prisoner of war at this point. Obviously, there's no Geneva Convention. This is, well, roughly, more than 100 years before the Geneva Convention was written, and I don't think there were any articles on the terms of treatments of prisoners of war. So kind of curious, actually, if any of them would defect to the French and if their treatment would have been better.
Napoleon, having received just 7,000 reinforcements, prepares to meet Alvinci's advance.
Let me guess, he has triple the amount. Double? Let's say double.
He will not only be outnumbered, he doesn't know where his enemy will strike. And Napoleon must hold one division back to cover Wormser's garrison. It's commanded once more by General Serrurier, recovered from his long illness. Augereau's division watches the Adige, while Massena guards Verona. The Northern Division has a new commander. Napoleon has sacked Vaubois for his poor performance and put in his place General Barthélemy Joubert. He is a hard-working, brave, and exceptionally modest commander, and like Napoleon, just 27 years old.
Same age as me.
General Ray is in reserve, south of Lake Garda.
I can't imagine being in charge of 10,000 men. Anyways,
General Alvinci has received 14,000 reinforcements and orders to relieve Mantua as soon as possible. He is eager to march, but heavy snow and the late arrival of equipment and supplies delays his advance until the 7th of January. The first columns on the move are Provera and Berlich, but their offensive is merely a diversion intended to draw Napoleon's attention away from the main threat, which will be coming down the Adige Valley. Alvinci has divided this force into 6 columns. Their mission is to envelop and destroy Joubert's division at Rivoli and clear the path to Mantua.
Oof.
But Rivoli is a strong defensive position. They must hit it hard and fast before the French can respond. Napoleon, assuming any Austrian advance is still weeks away, has travelled to the Papal States with a column of troops commanded by Colonel Lannes. They intend to put a little pressure on the Pope, who continues to stir opposition to France. However, as soon as he receives reports of enemy movement, Napoleon races back to his headquarters at Rovabella. By now, Alvinci's forces have also begun to advance, but serious planning failures quickly emerge. Lusignan's first column, on the right flank of the advance, has orders to cross the slopes of Monte Baldo and attack Joubert from the rear.
Brutal. Yeah, like I was just gonna say, I've been there before, just as a tourist, obviously, and dude, those slopes are brutal. I mean, I think this is a real image, actually, from probably,
It's soon clear that these orders are...
Yeah, this isn't like a rendering or anything. Like, it's brutal. I mean, the mountains are beautiful, but I can't imagine marching troops
wildly optimistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Dreamed up by staff officers who'd not seen the terrain.
Yeah, hello.
The peak of Monte Baldo is more than 7,000 feet high. Its slopes are covered in deep snow and ice.
Yeah.
The paths are treacherous, even more so after dark, and there is no firewood for making camp. Only by taking a wide detour can Lusignan make any progress at all, whilst losing 200 men to exhaustion and exposure. Meanwhile, the 2nd and 3rd Austrian columns reach the French outpost at Ferrara. An initial attack is repulsed, and following their orders, they wait for Lusignan's column to appear before launching a second attack. However, Lusignan's column is not yet in sight.
Of course. Hello.
Alvinci's plan relies on swift, bold...
And also, it's good to know that staff officers, even back in 1797, had no idea what they were talking about. If anyone's in the military, you'll know what I'm talking about.
bold action.
You'll know what I mean.
But just 48 hours in, it's falling apart.
Sorry, 1796. Yeah. A fall, yeah, exactly. And then snow just completely
At
screws up the
Rovabella,
plan.
Napoleon ponders the incoming reports. He knows that Joubert's forward outpost is under attack at Ferrara, that Massena has repulsed an Austrian attack on Verona, and Augereau faces a sizable Austrian force near Legnago, poised to cross the Adige. Is Alvinci using the same tactics as before, making his attack from the east? Then, a second report arrives from Joubert. His scouts have detected an enemy column marching around his flank. He has no doubt that he faces a major Austrian attack and has begun withdrawing his forces to Rivoli. The report I have given you is exact, he tells his chief. Be assured, the enemy will make every effort to throw me onto the blockade of Mantua. The enemy's plan has been unmasked, Napoleon announces, and issues a flurry of orders. Massena is to march immediately to reinforce Joubert.
Okay.
Augereau is to send him cavalry and guns, while the rest of his division keeps watch on Provera. Ray is to move up to Castelnuovo. Servourier is to be on high alert for an attempted breakout by the Mantua garrison. While Joubert, the youngest and least experienced of Napoleon's divisional commanders, is instructed to hold Rivoli at any cost.
Wow.
And assured that help is on the way.
I mean, one thing though is that the Austrian troops are probably exhausted, whereas the French troops have been there at least for a couple of weeks. Oh, this is going to be an epic showdown. Measure themselves against the Republicans. Nice.
After giving the Austrians a bloody nose at Ferrara, Joubert has extricated his troops overnight and taken up a defensive position around Rivoli. Napoleon arrives around midnight and immediately sets out with Joubert to inspect the enemy's positions. The weather had cleared and the moonlight was superb. I climbed the different heights and observed the lines of enemy fires. They filled the country between the Adige and Lake Garda, and the atmosphere was ablaze with them. One could easily distinguish 5 camps, each composed of a column.
A bunch of these are probably from his
Until
memoirs,
reinforcements arrive, Napoleon has just Joubert's division, 10,000 men, to hold off 24,000 Austrians.
There we go, 2-1.
But Alvinci will help to even the odds by ordering Lusignan's first column to attempt a wide outflanking march to cut off the French line of retreat.
Okay.
And Napoleon decides the main road to Rivoli, which passes through a steep defile known as the Pontari,
Oh no.
can be held by a single regiment supported by entrenched cannon. This leaves more manageable odds of 9,000 against 12,000 in the centre. But Napoleon wants to push out his defensive line to hold the slopes that mark the edge of the Rivoli plateau. At 4 AM, General Vial's light infantry brigade advances through the darkness. They drive back the Austrian outposts and take the San Marco chapel.
Okay.
They're followed on their left by the rest of Joubert's division. But the French push too far. Skirmishes break out along the line, with heavy fighting on the heights of San Marco. Napoleon had not wanted to start the battle so early, but the combat escalates. At dawn, the Austrians attack the plateau in force.
I mean, I'm assuming that they have the higher ground here, right? With them being the heights, and so fascinating. But I wonder, do these units here have line of sight on what's going on through here, right? Or is this sort of an impassable terrain, if you will? That's what I'm curious about.
The French 85th Demi Brigade is outflanked and routed by Liptay's second column. The 29th Light, on its right, is forced to retreat, and it looks like the French line is crumbling. But the 14th, on their right, fights tenaciously.
Okay.
It's an intense infantry battle across broken ground, vineyards and walled gardens, with sudden charges, hurried withdrawals, and counter-charges.
Yep, really want to see this in the film.
When the Austrians overrun a French battery, an officer demands, "14th, will you let them take your guns?" His troops mount a ferocious charge that routs the Austrians and reclaims the battery. By 9 AM, Massena's troops have begun to arrive. They take up position on Joubert's left. The buckled French line is stabilized. But so far, the French have only faced half of Alvinci's 6 columns.
Oh,
One by one, the others now join the action.
Okay, so the wide, this is
Vukasovich's 6th column is on the far side of the Adige River. But its guns cause havoc among French troops holding the Pontari. Under this covering fire, Royce's 5th column charges up the narrow road and in fierce fighting storms the French entrenchments.
They're routed there.
This advance threatens the entire French right wing with encirclement, and a retreat begins. Moments later, gunfire to the southwest reveals Lusignan's 1st column has reached Affy, poised to cut off their escape.
Oh, Napoleon! How are you getting out of this one,
The French situation is desperate. They are outnumbered, surrounded, and under heavy attack. Napoleon's staff look anxiously to their commander, wondering what miracle can save the army now.
To say calmly, they are ours. That's great. That's great.
Sensing victory, General Alvinci and his staff ride forward to urge his infantry on.
Yep. Okay, so what trap is Napoleon going to lead the Austrians into? That's what I'm sort of feeling out here. Through watching enough of these videos, there's going to be some sort of trap. Alvinci's going to blunder, and then they're going to be either not fully encircled, but take heavy casualties and be forced to retreat. Or there's going to be a miscommunication on the Austrian side. That's my guess is going in here. Could be completely wrong. Let's find out.
Napoleon remains calm.
Yep, what's he got?
He knows Alvinci's center columns are near exhaustion, and that they have no cavalry and little artillery support. He identifies Royce's column as the most immediate threat, and orders Joubert to send every man and gun he can spare for a counterattack. General Leclerc and a 21-year-old Captain Lassalle then charge with the entire French cavalry. just a few
21 and a
hundred
captain.
horsemen. Under this onslaught, the lead Austrian troops are driven back into the gorge. Here, they collide with the rest of the column coming up. Cavalry and infantry jammed together, some pushing forward, others trying to escape.
The bellows of
Joubert's
smoke.
men pour fire down on them from the overlooking ridge. The final straw is the devastating explosion of an ammunition wagon.
Oh. Where?
Austrian morale breaks. The survivors flood
gotta
back
be
down the
kidding me.
road to safety.
You gotta be kidding me.
Napoleon now turns his full attention to the centre,
And then he's
where
just
the
gonna
exhausted
crush
Austrian
right
columns
through.
have become spread out
Yep.
and disordered.
And then just barrel
The
through
sudden
them.
appearance of French cavalry, supported by infantry and guns, sparks panic and a mass rout. Alvinci, who must have thought himself on the cusp of victory
Yep.
moments before, must join in an undignified race to the rear, spreading further alarm among his men. By 1 p.m, the bulk of the Austrian army is in headlong retreat,
Yep.
leaving Lusignan's.
I mean, I said it was going to be a trap, right? Was that a trap? I gotta say yes. Did they hit the ammunition card on purpose? Was it an accident? Morale breaks, then they just cut right back through the center. Is Napoleon one of the luckiest men ever to exist? He's got to be, right? He's got to be up there. If that was just a stray cannon hit that blew up the ammunition wagon, shattering morale, and then being able to pierce right back into the attacking forces that think that they're on the cusp of victory to overwhelm your French forces and then halfer them into a headlong retreat. Then being able to then peel back south and focus on them who are now stranded and, right, through this little column here, about to be encircled themselves. Amazing.
First column in an awkward position.
Yep.
Completely isolated, he begins a fighting withdrawal. But the
As he
arrival
peel
of
back.
General Ray's brigade in his rear triggers a rout. Fewer than half of his 4,000 men
There you go.
escape.
And so then you and you encircle 50% of the forces in the rear. There was supposed to be a wide swinging gate to cut through and cut you off. Uno reverse card.
Through tenacity, courage, and good fortune, the army of Italy has turned a grim situation into an astonishing triumph.
Yep. I was going to say astounding victory.
French casualties are modest. Austrian losses are devastating. Over the
Wow,
next few days,
8,000
5,000 more Austrians are captured as they struggle back through the mountain passes.
Oh god, and then they have to go over those mountains again. Oh.
Napoleon will not be there to see it. He's received news that
Miserable.
Provera has crossed the Adige and is marching on Mantua. It is a chance for him to strike one more blow against the enemy and to seal the fate of Mantua.
Wow. Yep. Truly the spoiled, lucky child of victory.
Leaving Joubert in command at Rivoli, with orders to renew the attack at dawn, Napoleon races south with Massena's division. Provera has no clue of the disaster that's engulfed Alvinci's army, nor that the wolves now gather for him. He pushes on to Mantua, shadowed by
no.
Augereau, who snaps up his rearguard.
Yep.
2,000 men taken prisoner. With just 7
Oh, they're walking into a death trap. They don't even know it yet. It's a complete death trap. At Castellado as well. Oh, no.
1,000 left,
Oh, no.
Provera's only hope is to break through the French siege lines. First, he tries to attack San Giorgio. Formidable French defences and a powerful cannonade stop him cold. The next day, he launches a coordinated attack with Wormser against
But I mean, the troops in there are so exhausted.
French forces at La Favorita. But Napoleon has now arrived with Massena's division from the north.
But while tired, are high morale due to the victory.
Wormser's weak, starving men are forced back into the citadel.
Come on.
While a determined
I think it was Suleiman the Great who said that an army marches on their stomach, right?
charge by the 57th Demi Brigade smashes into Provera's flank. With Augereau approaching from the east, Provera faces impossible odds and surrenders with his entire force.
5,000? 4,000? 7,000.
Wormser's last hope of rescue has been crushed. He puts off the inevitable for 2 agonizing weeks.
Wow.
Until, with all food exhausted, he finally accepts terms for Mantua's surrender on the 2nd of February. He and an escort will return to Austria. His 16,000 remaining troops become prisoners. Austrian losses in the campaign reach a staggering 44,000 men.
Oh my God.
After 8 months, the siege of Mantua...
44,000 men. Devastating. Absolutely devastating. Wow.
Is over. A victory that will soon be celebrated on the streets of Paris. But it is General Serrurier, not Napoleon, who takes the formal Austrian surrender. His commander-in-chief has already departed to take on his next opponent.
Of course he is.
The Pope.
Okay. What objects?
From Rome, Pope Pius VI has once more been agitating against the French. And so Napoleon marches south with 9,000 men to explain the new realities of power in Italy. At Faenza, General Victor's division...
You take on the man who's been... I'm probably getting this a little wrong, but, selected by God himself, and you tell him, hey, this is how things are going to be from now on, right?
Division sweeps aside papal forces, and Ancona is taken without a fight. The subsequent Treaty of Tolentino forces the Pope to give up Romagna, as well as 30 million francs and 100 works of art.
Can you imagine if Olaf Scholz or something like this, I don't know, Emmanuel Macron, whoever the chancellor in Austria is now, they've gone through 3 since I've moved here, and they march into Rome and they say, hey, here's how the state of affairs is going to be, right? Just imagine.
Belatedly, Napoleon's victories persuade the Directory to back him in force. French armies stuck on the Rhine are ordered to send him reinforcements. Their 34-year-old commander, another rising star of the French army, is congratulated on his brilliant winter crossing of the Alps. His name is General Jean Bernadotte.
Ah, Bernadotte, okay. Some familiar faces.
On the 10th of March, with 70,000 confident, seasoned troops under his command, Napoleon goes on the offensive.
Oh, buddy. Oh, this is going to be...
He sends Joubert to invade the Tyrol, Massena to advance up the Piave Valley, while he leads the bulk of the army on the most direct road to Vienna. The enemy is scattered and demoralized.
They're not even far from Klagenfurt.
Even the appointment of a new commander,
Klagenfurt.
the Emperor's own brother, Archduke Charles, fails to restore morale. Charles is regarded as a military prodigy. He's 2 years younger than Napoleon and has defeated the armies of both General Jourdan and Moreau in Germany. But he does not have enough troops or time. He fights a delaying action at the Tagliamento River, but it ends in disaster when Bernadotte surrounds and captures 2,000 Austrians, 10 guns, and 8 standards.
Leave them alone, they're already dead.
The French pursuit continues, with Massena covering Napoleon's northern flank.
Oh no. Yep, now they're in Austria proper. Well,
he arrives
Austria.
at Tarvis in time to block the Austrians' retreat. In 3 days' fighting, the French take another 3,000 prisoners. Napoleon's troops outmarch and outfight the Austrians at every turn. But his situation is more precarious than it seems.
Okay.
The other French armies are only just crossing the Rhine, while his own supply lines are now overextended and vulnerable.
Can't be too
Rather
quick.
than withdraw, Napoleon continues to advance,
Of course he
while
does.
proposing to Archduke Charles that they open peace negotiations. The Austrians accept. 2 days later, both sides agree an armistice, and peace talks begin at Leoben. After 5 years of conflict, Napoleon's dazzling advance into Austria has brought the War of the First Coalition to an end.
Of which there would be many more. Many more against him.
So ends Napoleon's first campaign,
Wow.
almost exactly a year after it began, 380 miles away on the shores of the Mediterranean.
Astounding. Astounding. He belonged to the army of Italy. Your countrymen will say as they point you out. Wow. And he took such a demoralized, ragtag, group of, I don't want to use the term misfits, but the absolute butt end of the French army, and led them to damn near Vienna. Took tens of thousands of prisoners. The casualties were also in the tens of thousands. Told the Pope, hey, here's how things are going to be, all when he was 27 years old. And some of these events before he was 27 years old.
Negotiations at Leoben
What did you do this week?
become the basis for the Treaty of Campo Formio, signed 5 months later.
I want to go to Leoben now.
The Austrian Netherlands, roughly modern Belgium, formally passed to France. The Venetian Republic, invaded and systematically looted by Napoleon's troops, is divided between France and Austria.
Which will never come into conflict ever again, I promise you.
So ends the 1200-year history of the Serene Republic of Venice.
Wow.
The famous horses of St. Mark are among its many treasures dispatched to the Louvre in Paris to join its rapidly expanding Italian collection.
Are they still there? Huh.
The French part of Venice joins its other Italian client states to form a new Cisalpine Republic. The author of its constitution, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yep.
It's an illustration of how far the 27-year-old general has come in just a year. Having waged one of the most brilliant military campaigns in history, many would say his best, he now dictates terms to kings and popes, summons new states into being, and nurtures his status as the most celebrated military commander in Europe.
All from coming from being a lowly a lowly boy from Corsico. And at 27, that's just Wahnsinn. Einfach Wahnsinn.
He has achieved all this thanks to formidable intelligence, relentless hard work, and inspiring leadership,
And luck.
which he has used to forge a unique bond of trust with his men. He's had luck, too, along the way, and been ably served by a group of brilliant officers, many of whom will be with him for years to come.
Yep. I'm almost there.
For Napoleon still has many extraordinary things to achieve. His Italian campaign is just the first chapter in one of the most astonishing lives in history.
Yep. Wow. Wow. 1 of 6, by the way. Yeah. What is there to say? Is that his most brilliant campaign? I think I want to say yes. Austerlitz is... For a whole campaign, it's tough to say on the spot. That's really tough to say on the spot. But it's got to be up there, right? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What a great video. Absolutely amazing. And we're getting more Napoleon videos, by the way. I guess I can say this out. Epic History TV, they are going to produce a Napoleon in Egypt series. So that was one of their teasers that was on their Patreon. I feel okay saying that if you made it to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching all the way along. And there will always be more Napoleon videos. I'm still going through the main series. I'm not quite done. I believe the War of Nations is next, Battle of Nations. And yeah, thanks again for joining me if you made it this far. Take care. All the best. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. See you in the next one.